Well, welcome back to one more round. Guys, I'm really excited today. You saw our last episode where it was Ariel and I talking, learning about his story and kind of what Arrive's all about, where we're going. And I told you about the secret weapon of Arrive. This is the CEO, Adela, but she is also the wife of Ariel. They've got 4 kids. And I will tell you, they're some of my absolute favorite people. Her specifically, I was telling somebody this the other day. I was doing a presentation on estate plans. I said, you got to meet Adela. She's like a real saint on earth. I said, in fact, she literally, behind her desk, it says, "Do It Anyway" by Mother Teresa. And it's like on this green background. And she lives that way. But what's funny is like, you don't like to be on camera. And I remember you telling me this because the first time Ariel was on the podcast, I was like, "Oh, do you want to be on?" Like,
no, I'm good.
And she sat over there, and I didn't even know you that well. So I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool." And then I've gotten to know you. I'm like, "Man, girl, you got to talk. I mean, you're amazing.
Yeah.
I've learned so much from you."
Thank you.
So thank you guys for doing this today. One of the things that I thought would be just cool to talk about, because you have 4 kids. How old are your kids?
Yeah. Do you want to answer this one?
26, 24, 22, 22,
He's 21.
21, and 17.
17, and then we had one of them just got.
Yeah, just got engaged. Our baby girl, 24. So
How are we feeling about this?
still surreal. Still hasn't sunk in.
Yeah.
It's just
I think as the
crazy.
time gets closer, I mean, it has hit me a little bit because, it's my only daughter, and knowing that she's engaged now, she's going to move to South Carolina at some point. I feel it a little bit, but I think as time goes on and we get closer to her actual wedding day, I'm going to probably be a mess, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah, I probably will be a mess. I'll be in the fetal position in the corner somewhere.
Right. Yeah, I know. You losing my baby girl.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the more I thought about it, because I know you guys have older kids, but you've been in business for quite some time. Arrive officially, what, 7, 8 years? 8
8
Yeah,
years.
8 years. Yeah.
But even prior to that, which means that even your oldest son was in the house, was how old? 18, 19 at the time, at the beginning, where you guys started to work together, or before that?
Well, it was before, because he was always an entrepreneur, and so I always supported him. And so when he went into the financial industry, I was a surgical nurse for 20 years, and so that wasn't my expertise, but I wanted to see what it's about and kind of understand, so that if I had people to help he could help, then I would know what he would do, so that I can have a better conversation and say, hey, you know what, my husband can help you with that.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the things that I learned early on, was just, be a supportive spouse. A lot of times we did kind of argue sometimes because the money wasn't always the same. And so, but I always went to all the events and different things and stuff. And I don't know if you said the story about one of our events that we actually came out to here at the one of the resorts in Arizona, and we didn't have any money. We had just kind of lost everything, and I knew his dream was big, and I can only see in front of me, right? And he was a visionary. That's why I think we complement each other and make a great team, is because he can see 10 steps further.
Yeah.
And so, I trusted him, prayed a lot, and I was like, okay, well, here's my wedding ring. Go ahead and pawn it.
You pawned your wedding ring?
I pawned my wedding ring.
No, she didn't pawn it. She sold it.
Well, I sold it.
Back then at that time, there was people everywhere saying, we'll buy your gold, we'll buy your gold, we'll buy your gold. And we didn't have enough money to get to this event. And she's like, well, take my wedding ring and just sell it.
Yeah.
And so
We pulled up to it was like a double tree.
they had this event like the Doubletree where they were buying gold.
And so it was like, okay, here you go. And so, and then, you think about well, my daughter can't have that ring, all these different emotions. And you're like, okay, no, God has a plan. It's fine. It's just material. I can't take it with me when I'm gone. And, it hurt, but at the same time.
Well, then think about my point of view from that, right? You got your wife giving you remember I was saying make sure your wife wins, or make sure that person that believes in you wins. Yeah. So she gives me her wedding ring. She's like, I can't do it. So she stayed in the car. Right? So think about, you're the guy You're the provider, the protector, the guy that's supposed to make things happen, move your family forward, and you have your wife's ring in your hand because you're about to go sell it to get money to keep on pushing to a vision that you're the only one that can see it. And walking over there, you feel like that big, right? You talk about checking your masculinity. Like, bro, like I felt that big, and I felt even smaller walking back with ring. We probably bought it for $3,000 back then. They probably gave me $500-600 for it, because you never get what the value of the ring, what the jewelry is, right?
Of course not.
Yeah, that was a tough day. That was
It's
tough.
very interesting. And I never told you guys this story, but so when I went out on my own, 2008, I had left Gannett, which I was working at, and Jess was totally on board with me going out, doing my thing, being an entrepreneur, all that stuff. I was an idiot, by the way. I thank God she believed in me. But we sold her Jetta, that was paid off, and literally, so we would have cash for me to have a runway to do it. So same kind of thing, but not a wedding ring. Wedding ring is like, that's, wow, sacred. But
you make those like sacrifices, right? And so being at the event, you know, seeing the vision, like, and I think we even took our little one. I can't even remember. I think it was Aiden.
It was Aiden, our middle
because I was
son.
still nursing. And we went, you know, to Arizona, carpooling with people, sleeping in the same room with everybody like on the floor, and you know, baby and nursing, and you're just like, okay, we're doing it because we have a dream, right?
Well, hold on. The hotel we stayed at was like super scummy. So you close the door and there's like this gap in the door where you can still see outside, right? You go in the shower and you turn the shower on and the water starts to fill up in the tub because it doesn't drain. The bed sheets looked so bad, we never actually got into the bed. We slept on top of the bed. It was super scummy, but hey, whatever, it fit the budget. So
Yeah.
No, I mean, and like you do those things, and so that was kind of the beginning of it. And you know, he told me, you guys made a decision. What do we like about the industry? What do you not? You know, you crumpled up the things you don't, threw it on the floor, and you built a big company. We're going to come back to fill in some of the blanks, but I want to give a juxtaposition to the people that are listening. And I just learned that word, by the way, so I'm super proud of myself.
Smart.
But last month, you guys were in New York.
Yeah, that was awesome.
What were you doing there?
Well, we were learning from, obviously, you know, industry leaders that are partners with the New York Stock Exchange. Nexus is a partner of the New York Stock Exchange, and so learning from the CEO of an insurance company, direct, you know, in a boardroom of maybe 20 advisors, really 3% of all advisors in the nation are able to partake in this company and offer products that are going to put people in a better position for retirement. And so we feel privileged and honored being able to offer that to our clients and stuff. And so being at the Goldman Sachs, right, I mean, as advisors in the business, that is probably like it's kind of getting to the World Series, right, or the Super Bowl. It's like getting there to the New York Stock Exchange, right, because that's where everything happens. And so being there to see it and go through the New York Stock Exchange and walk through the halls and stuff and seeing where a company comes out and is part of the New York Stock Exchange and comes public, you know, seeing the closing bell and getting behind the scenes.
I think awesome. The bigger part of the New York trip was more so the relationships that you continue to build. You know, we were in the 45th floor of the Goldman Sachs building overlooking uptown, downtown. Statue of Liberty was right there. I could see everything from their building. But it was those relationships that we continue to build, and that's how companies are built. When you're trying to build a company to where we are trying to get a right financial to, it's relationships, bro. Right. Like, yes, we learned about product, and yes, we learned about how to make sure our clients are going to get absolutely taken care of. But it's the relationships that we continue to build that now Right Financial is on the map with a lot of big corporations out there that we are going to be able to partner with today and in the future.
Absolutely. And so I just want to pause for just a quick second there, because if you were listening to that, we just heard your story of when you sold your wedding ring to learn, right, at an event, and you didn't have much till you were at the New York Stock Exchange with a company that literally works with some of the largest life insurance companies in the world. So that is huge, and that's a testimony to not only sticking to what your dream is, but having a vision and then working towards it. Now, we'll color in some of those lines in a minute, but here's what I love is that I can come to you specifically, or both of you, but like I can come to you and be like, hey, Adela, I have this couple. For example, I had somebody that was in the trades, you know, and he was retiring early, and I didn't know exactly what would be the best for him. And he's got a pension, he's got a couple different things he needed to know to do. And I had asked you, what do you think? And Ariel actually said the same thing. We had a product, and it happened to be with Nationwide, and we moved him into that. Great move for him. But someone that is in that in like the trades business, or that has a pension of some sort, and that could be with the government or whatever, what should they be looking out for? How can they maximize these types of things?
Yeah. Well, pensions are a rarity now, right? I mean, because back when Ford, he was the one that actually kind of created it. You work for us, we'll take care of you. And that was kind of the longevity of it. So federal employees, state employees, some, trade companies offer pensions, but they're going away. And so pensions, if you do have it, they're really about 40 to 60% of your actual income in retirement. So there's a big income gap, whether it's 40%, 60%, 50%, you still have an income gap. Yeah. And that's the biggest problem with pensions. It's just not enough money. So if your employer, if you work for any of those that offer a pension, participate in the supplemental. The supplemental is something you save in addition, apart from what is already set through the pension, you save in addition to help offset that income gap. And so that could be a 401A, a 457, a 403B, a 401K. It just depends on the structure of the business.
These are all different retirement accounts.
These are all
you can put in a different bucket.
retirement accounts that you can save in addition to your pension to help complement it when you get to retirement. Because again, you're looking at a 40 to 60% from your pension that you're going to get guaranteed income for life, but then you still have a big gap of where you're going to get that 100% to make.
Yeah.
And so saving, whether it's 5%, 8%, 10%, you can save up to $23,000 in these. Once you hit 50, you can save up to $30,500. So trying to max that out throughout your working years, that's going to be a big game changer for you. Because like my dad, he worked for the federal government. He only saved in his pension. He didn't really partake in a TSA, a tax sheltered annuity, until later on, like maybe 4 or 5 years before retirement. Was just not enough, and he burned through that within a year. And now they're just living paycheck to paycheck because cost of living's gone up, and that pension gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Insurance goes up, right? Your life insurance, all these things that come through your employer, you lose when you retire. You just have your pension.
So somebody comes to us that's in that situation, and they're trying to put a plan together. What are we talking to them about? What is a conversation you're having that plan looks like, things they need to be looking out for, and how do you build a plan through a runway of like 10 years?
Yeah, so what I like to see is see everything. What do they have? What does the employer offer, right? Let's take advantage of what they can control. And then we look at the income planning, right? See how much income, because with a pension, you can actually calculate what you're gonna look or have at 60, 65, 67. You can calculate it because there's the formula, and you can kind of plan ahead. So when you know that number, then you can kind of plan your supplemental and then see how much combined that would be, getting you closer to how much income you need in retirement. So the income is one. Healthcare is another, because again, not all employers allow you to carry on with their employer plan. Those are the first things as retirees, or when retirement benefits are coming into play. with discussions on employer benefits, retirees are the first one on the chopping block because they're so expensive. You think of just healthcare, right? You tend to get the need for healthcare and medicine is more expensive as you get older because you don't take care of yourself, you know, and so the cost is more expensive for the employer to keep you on their part of the plan. So they're quickly to like nudge you to Medicare at 65. You take care of it, right? So healthcare is a big one. So having that plan, seeing what's available through your employer, or when you want to retire, if Medicare is the option, okay, having supplemental and so forth. And then the next is tax strategies. We look at, do you need tax deductions? You know, what are your liabilities? How can we structure, you know, that break-even point? We do paycheck analysis so that we can kind of see, maybe we adjust it 2 to 3% more into your supplemental
And you'll be
account.
surprised how many people have tax issues.
Yeah.
And they're not even maximizing or taking advantage of their
Employers.
employer-sponsored plan like a 401k. So they're not funding their retirement correctly in a 401k, but they're paying a check to Uncle Sam every year.
Right.
Yeah.
When you're like, if you just fund this correctly, this goes down to zero.
Right.
Yeah, and that's huge. So you're looking
Yeah.
at those things. What are some other tax things that you look at when somebody comes in that they may or that might just be out of their purview?
Yeah. So I just had a conversation earlier with a business owner. So a business owner, same thing. Their CPA may not share with them all the options available to them. So most accountants will do an IRA, which is an individual retirement account, which is okay. But you can only put up to $7,000 into it, $6,000 or $7,000, depending on age. But then that's it. But as a business owner, if you have a tax ID, well, you can partake in a SEP IRA, which now you can save 25% of your compensation up to $65,000. So I like that number better, right?
Yeah.
6,000 versus 65,000. Right?
And for
That's a
business
big
owners,
difference.
that's their biggest headache is tax
It's
issues.
taxes, right? And then obviously if you're well compensated and now you're doing things, now you have other defined plans that you can participate where it's a blend of life insurance and annuities, and now you're saving, you know, $200,000-$300,000 into these plans, setting yourself up for the future, but then lowering your tax liability. So
Yeah. So the SEP IRA, just so we can hit on that a little bit, because we have a lot of self-employed friends. Is that something they can put into? Because I think, what was it, like 350,000 is like the max they
the
can
compensation,
make, right? And then 65,000 was the number that they can put in. With that number, is that like pre-tax money, or how does that work from a tax perspective? How does it help them from a tax perspective?
yeah, so it lowers your taxable income. So some, as business owners, just depending on how payroll or how their system, every business is different. Some do quarterly, some do monthly, some do annually. You know, they kind of go through, they kind of set money aside, and then their year end, they get with their CPA and determine, okay, we're going to show this amount of income, this is what we have saved, let's write a check into our SEP IRA, and now that just lowered our taxable liability.
Yeah.
So it just depends on how everybody's structured. But even that, a lot of tax preparers don't talk to their business owners.
I don't think
about
they
that.
know about it. Honestly, I think a lot of tax preparers know a lot of the basic stuff, but when it comes to like, I'm very surprised. Like if you put a room full of 10 business owners right here, 7 of them have probably never heard of a SEP IRA from their accountant.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, I was just having a conversation with a business owner yesterday. In fact, he's an attorney who's got a law firm that's growing like crazy. He'd never heard of it, and I'm like, we need to set you one up because he's making he's significant money.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, we need to look into that, and so.
Or even doctors, right? If they're a partnership, they may set up an S corp, but then they have their solo LLC, and it's still an S corp, right? The partnership pays the LLC or the S corp, and then they pay themselves out of that. So even that can set up a SEP IRA. Obviously, if you have employees, it changes a little bit dynamics. So it's intended for 5 or less, or like Ariel and I, it's he and I, right? So that 25% is kind of spread amongst, you know, everybody. But if it's just he and I or myself, then yeah, partake in it.
Yeah.
Definitely take advantage of it. But every business is different, but understanding there are options out there apart from just the traditional IRA. And then obviously if you have employees, well, you can do a 401k, you know, there's different plans that are available to business owners to help maximize their deductions.
Awesome. So I know we actually work with a lot of life insurance companies, right? Because they'll actually allow you to set up a retirement account of all kinds of difference. Why should somebody work with a life insurance account, or a company, I should say, rather than a Schwab or a Fidelity? What are the benefits of a life insurance company?
Go ahead.
Well, one of the big benefits is fees. There's no fees. That's a big one, right? Because
That's a good one.
if you're starting out a business, right? Let's just say you own a garage repair shop, right? There's maybe 5 of you guys. You know, you guys are just starting out. You guys each maybe have your own truck. You're just trying to kind of get your bearings, right? And you may not have a lot of income, but you want to start saving. Having a small plan, like a simple IRA, there's no fees to set up. It's a simple form that you can print from the IRS website, 5304 form. You set up either your deduction, whether 1%, 2%, up to 3%, and you can partake in a plan that now you can save up to about $14,000. Not as much as a 401k, but you can save a good substantial amount and start saving in a retirement plan. Well, there's no admin fees.
Right.
So it's nice with an insurance company. I'm sure we've all seen those commercials with, Peyton Manning and Brad Paisley saying, hey, Nationwide just doesn't do life insurance, they do retirement. A lot of the companies that we work with all do retirement accounts. And so they've been around for 100+ years and have been doing retirement accounts for a long, long time.
Yeah, usually when you deal with an insurance company in the retirement world, the biggest separator is the fees. And the protection of your principal.
Yeah. That's
I mean, there comes a time or a day when a corporation starts to get so big that a 401k makes sense.
Right.
But when you got most corporations or most companies that are like 5, like she was saying, 5 employees and less, those fees are a big deal, and they don't need all the bells and whistles. They just need a plan in place. They can help their employees save for retirement, and it helps with employee retention.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's something that a lot of people look for. So there actually was a presentation I did not too long ago at another law firm, and it wasn't something that was offered yet, right? And there was a lady there, and she was going through some health struggles, and she wasn't, just because it's a small growing company, she wasn't able to take advantage of some of these things. Yet the business owner can put these things in place.
Right.
So it's like just letting them know the options. And a lot of times, if they're a smaller business, correct me if I'm wrong, but like they just don't know the options. I didn't. I mean, I had a business for 15 years. I didn't know really all of these options. I just knew that I had to make sure that the lights stayed on and that business kept coming in, so I could pay my employees and all that. But as far as the product side, I mean, life insurance is one of the things we do a lot of.
Yeah.
I mean, that's I would say the bread, butter,
it's a foundation
jam,
for sure.
foundation.
Yeah.
I'm a huge believer in it. I mean, we know my story. Like, I had never heard of the word living benefit or accelerated benefits in my life until I got into this business in December.
Wow.
And it was so funny because we had a lady who's a good friend of mine. She sold me my policy. She was actually looking at potentially working with us. And after our meeting, she took me outside and she said, hey, your policy has accelerated benefits. And you guys know the story.
Yeah.
I fought tooth and nail with this company because technically my heart transplant, which should have fallen under, is a critical thing. And they had to do it on a chronic, and I had to get paperwork from 4 different hospitals and my primary care, and then go back and forth. And long story short, they did cut me a check, and they gave me a piece of that while I was alive.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's huge. Now, I will say that is not the case with a lot of the companies we work with.
Right.
The one that I had was not the greatest, we'll say. But tell me a little bit about life insurance. What does that look like for people, both term and permanent products like universal, index universal?
Well, let's dumb that down even a little bit more.
Yeah.
So what's today, Friday? Just Wednesday, I had lunch with a friend of mine, and he makes about $165,000 a year. His wife probably makes about another 100. So together they make about $250,000, $260,000 a year, right? Yeah. That's pretty good. Yeah. And you would think that, especially when it comes to life insurance, like they have it dialed in. So I asked him because, he was asking me questions about Arrive Financial and what we do and different things. And, life insurance came up. And I'm like, well, let me put it to you very simply. I said, do you have life insurance? And he says, yeah, we do. I'm like, okay, cool, good. I said, do you have it outside of your employer? Excuse me. Or is it tied to your employer? And he goes, no, actually, my wife carries it through her job. Gotcha. So let me ask you, do you think it's important that you guys get it outside of her employer just in case something happens? And he's like, I never thought of it that way, but it's probably pretty smart to get it outside of her job just in case she has to switch or just in case she ever gets laid off. And I go, yeah. I go, well, let me kind of take that a little further down the road. Do you know if your policies pay you out if you get sick, or does somebody actually have to pass away? And he goes, well, no, it's life insurance. You got to pass away. I'm like, well, that's where it's different. A real life insurance policy takes care of you while you're still alive. It is called life insurance for a reason. And I kind of just broke down to him, quick footnotes on the different things that living benefits covers. I gave him not specifically you, but I said your story to him. And he's like, oh my gosh. He goes, I had no idea that even existed. I'm like, yeah, most people don't. That's the reason why we love what we do. Mm-hmm. Because living benefits is what makes life insurance even better than what we think about. Because in the old world, when I first started, you're like, well, that's cool. You got $1 million policy, but you're dead, bro. Like, who cares? Yeah. Right? You're dead. Now it's like, hey, well, Bob got diagnosed with stage 2 cancer. He's got a $500,000 policy. He could potentially get a check for $250,000 that he doesn't have to pay it back. And if he recovers and he's fine, he's still covered for the difference. And so when I put it to him that plainly, he was like, oh my gosh. He goes, we need to definitely look into something like that. Married, kids, travel soccer, the whole 9 yards. That's as simple as I made it for him. Complete sense.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. And you have term, and then you have products that last your entire life, right?
Yeah.
You're whole and then universal. Mm-hmm. Why should somebody look at, or I should say, at what point should somebody start looking at like a universal policy? What are the benefits of that over just a term?
Well, just in general, our rule of thumb, once you hit 35, you need to start having something permanent. Mm. You need to start transitioning over to permanent. And the reason being is that even a term, let's just say you get a 30-year term, there are like maybe 2-3 companies out there that will do a 35 and a 40-year, but majority of them are 30-year. Mm-hmm. So even if you offer a 30-year, you get another 30-year term at 35. Well, at 65, it's done. The likelihood of you outliving that is a huge percentage. Yeah. Only about 2% of those term policies actually pay out because people will outlive it. And then they're 65 and their premium just skyrockets because they've outlived it. And so there are ones that you can ladder, but again, you're just getting term on term on term on term. Mm-hmm. But permanent in the insurance world, that's the time frame. 35 is a time frame where it starts getting more expensive as you get older because just health in general. You're not 20 anymore, and so tires need to be, replaced. Yeah.
And a lot of times, we get hit with the question.
Parts, spark plugs.
A lot of times we get hit with the question of, well, which one's better, term or permanent? And really, there is no which one's better. It just depends on who's asking. Where are they at in their life? Yeah. How old are they? Yeah. Do they have any health issues? Maybe, because you can use an IUL to save, as a tax-free supplemental retirement. Right. So there's a lot of different things. So, I laugh when I hear people get so stuck on only offering one type of a life insurance policy when it's not about the life insurance policy. It's about the person asking the question. Right. That's ideally what it's about.
Yeah. Right. It makes me laugh because I do find people have such a hard stance on it. You got to have only term. Like there's a guy, I won't mention his name, but it rhymes with Rave Damsey. Yeah. And
I was going to mention that name too.
He's just only term. You can't have a permanent product. Yet literally, I've done estate plans where I've seen people that have stocked away a ton of money in their permanent. One of my doctors literally just took a loan out from his that it's a wash loan for a chunk of money for something he's doing that he'll either pay back or he won't. It doesn't really matter.
And he can choose if he doesn't have to. Yeah.
And it was a huge asset to him. And so you're right. Like it comes down to what does that situation look like?
Exactly.
And I think that really is why one of the reasons I love working here is because we look at the holistic situation of
Yeah.
the person,
Right.
the family,
Their goals.
their
Yeah.
their income, their debt, and they're going to have a different picture. Everybody's going to have a different
Yes.
game
Yeah.
plan.
Yes.
I mean,
based on
we
that.
own both. We
We own
have
both.
permanent
Yeah.
And we
that
have
we
term.
treat like we overfunded and
Like a nest
we're
egg.
building cash in it. But I also have a term because one, I'm going to use those living benefits if I ever need to, and I know it's going to term out. But it's okay. I understand that while my kids are going through college and certain things, and we're building a business, all these different things, I'm okay paying money to have that extra coverage to give me peace of mind of knowing that if something happens to me, like it's just going to help Adele and the kids out even more.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll hit on one last note on that. Is it's important to get it done now while you're
Yes.
thinking about it,
Yes.
because the reality is your health's going to change.
Yes.
I was fortunate enough to have somebody who worked at New York Life at 27 came into my living room when I didn't have two nickels to rub together, and I would have had to borrow one of the nickels. I'm telling you. But he imposed how important it was to me and Jessica. We had a Joshua at the time, so a newborn son, and we bought a policy. I think it was, I don't remember the amounts, but it wasn't much. It was term. But it got me thinking about the future.
Right.
And I got a policy then. And then I got my policies redone when our businesses started doing better when I was 35. I was healthy.
Yeah.
Well, guess what happened to me?
Yeah.
Come 38, I
Yeah.
had heart failure. I was in the hospital for 2 weeks. Come 40, I go into the hospital, and this time it was like, hey, bro, you're either going to die or we're going to throw this machine. And like a new heart wasn't even on the table. And I asked my wife on the way to the hospital, can you check with, and I won't mention her name, but can you check with her to make sure our life insurance is in good standings? And she did. And it's just one of those things where you're paying your
Yeah,
premiums you don't
absolutely.
think about.
You want to make sure. Yeah.
But it was all in good order. And thank goodness I did it when I was healthy.
Yeah.
So I think that's one thing, too, where when you have those conversations with people, for me anyway, I'm very adamant about, like, hey,
Yeah.
I'm never going to tell you that you don't need it. Like, you
Right.
do. You absolutely need it. And if you're healthy,
Absolutely.
get approved now.
Even if you're a single person, whether you're a single person, somebody depends on you, you're married, you're divorced, whatever the situation, everybody needs it.
Yep.
At some point.
I
or
had
another.
a gentleman in this conference room a couple months ago that wanted to talk about investing, blah 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 blah. I'm like, well, hold on here. Do you have any life insurance? And he's married with the daughter. I go, do you have any life insurance? He's like, no, I don't have any life insurance because I think once I build up my investment account, blah blah blah. I'm like, look, bro, I ain't gonna help you until you get life insurance. You can go to anybody else and they will help you invest because they don't care about you. I care about you. I care about your family. If you don't get life insurance, I'm not moving forward with anything else.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, right, building wealth, building retirement, a big piece of that, as we know, is mitigating risk.
Yeah.
Right? You want to make sure that you're mitigating any sort of downside that could potentially have in your life, and that's just a basic coverage,
Yeah.
right? And it, honestly, if all you can afford is a $500,000 or $250,000 policy that's $30 a month, fine,
Yeah.
start there. It's
Yeah.
cool, but it mitigates some risk
Yeah.
of your life. So that's a big piece. So I don't want to go too much more into that. Get life insurance.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, get covered.
Get covered.
But when it comes down to things like annuities, I think it's a misunderstood word.
Yes.
Right? Because again, it's a contract with a life insurance company. So somebody that would be looking at that, who's a great candidate for it, and why do you think it's a good thing to look into for many people out there?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different scenarios, So let's just say you left an employer, you have, 401k here, 401k here, 401k here. I just helped a client that had 4 accounts.
Yeah.
But she was self-employed. She was, self-employed with 2 accounts. She had investment guys, Ameriprise and Franklin Templeton. None of the guys wanted to consolidate it for her. They just opened up the account. They're like, yeah, we don't deal with that. I don't understand why. And she's like, well, I was always told I can't combine it. I go, it's a qualified account. Qualified goes to qualified money. Yes, we can consolidate. And so just things like that. When you have things outside you don't even know because it's been 15, 20 years, one thing you can consolidate. So utilizing an annuity kind of helps that to kind of bring it all together into one house. It's protected with the insurance, backed by the insurance company. It still allows you to save tax deferred. It still allows it to accumulate in time. she's not ready to retire, but it still allows for her to just kind of set it aside and let it grow, like set it and forget it. And so that's kind of the idea with the annuity.
In the annuity world, it's really simple to break it down like this, and I love things Barney style, right? Like, give it to me easy. Well, it's come down to this, like these two things in the annuity world. You have accumulation and you have income. So for your younger clients, they obviously still want to grow their money and do it in a way where it grows at a decent amount safely. For my clients that are in their 50s, they're probably more concerned about income, right? So this type of an annuity will make sure that my clients that are getting closer to that retirement window are able to get income and get guaranteed paychecks for the rest of their life, even if they withdraw out more than they actually started with. So putting it plainly in terms that I understand is annuities can cover a whole lot of different aspects for our clients. It really just comes down to how old are you, and are you looking for strictly accumulation, or are you looking to set up and start to dial in what that retirement on a monthly basis is going to look like?
Yeah. And annuities have come a long way because they're also looking at what's kind of taking place with people, right? Illness, Social Security gap, long-term care, retirement income, like all these different things. So there are riders that are available in these annuities that kind of fill in those gaps with people if they're uncertain. Am I going to need long-term care, right? But they don't want to spend money specifically for long-term care, right? And it's kind of 50-50. You don't know if you're going to need it or not. And you pay all this money into a long-term care and you don't need it. You're not in an assisted care. You don't need that. So having something built into an annuity gives you that safety net. Maybe you're concerned that Social Security is going to drop, and there's not a cost of a living increase, and you're concerned about that there's a rider for that. There's riders for different illnesses, or even just income, like Ariel was saying. So there's a lot of different stuff.
Because you think about when you retirement, you want certainty, right? You want to know that when you're retired, you're going to get a paycheck that's going to be that amount or more, depending on how the annuity works, forever.
Yeah.
Right? Because the last thing you want to do is get income off of this product for 10 years, and now you're in your mid-70s, and now it stops. Well, things have gotten more expensive, and now you lost that part of your income. Well, that's where, I don't think people take into consideration, like, just because you have $500,000 in your 401k, but you're used to living off of $50,000 a year, well, if you just do the math, that money's only going to last you 10 years, providing the market doesn't go down.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, totally.
And it also helps with tax strategies, right? Because you're taking smaller withdrawals, right, to help kind of mitigate your tax liability year after year. So when you're taking large lump sums, well, you're on the hook for those large sums of money that you have to pay taxes on, and it has to be accounted. So when you're taking smaller distributions, it helps kind of manage the tax liabilities year after year. Yeah. Whether it's RMDs or an income. But
RMD, what does that mean?
Oh, required minimum distribution.
I know what it means, but
Yeah.
So basically, at what age?
72.
72.
At 72, if Uncle Sam sees you have an account that's tax deferred and you haven't touched it, he will force you to touch it, or he will penalize you.
Yeah.
Because he wants to collect his piece.
Absolutely. He wants to take more of Uncle Sam's money.
Yes.
And we don't want Uncle Sam to have your money. So, we've talked a lot about the retirement side. And one of the things I believe gets missed a lot of times in our industry specifically is planning for the future. But you know what? You guys have grown an amazing family. You got 4 kids, and they're now adults, and you are growing a family. How do you balance saving for the future, but also living for now, and making sure that you're still taking time together and taking a vacation, or like we just bought a dog. I never thought I'd have a dog, but I did for the kids. So
Exactly.
What are your philosophies on that? And then tell me some stories.
So I think, honestly, we are blessed, right? I'm lucky that, we enjoy each other's company. That's a big one, because there's a lot of people we meet that they're like, oh, you work with your spouse? Oh, man, I couldn't handle working with my spouse. I'm like, I enjoy. He's my best friend, right? So, we are blessed in that respect. But it wasn't always, it it was a very massaging part when we first started, because he has his way of working, I have my way of working, and so we finally figured out how we can support one another and still complement each other and still work separately but together. And so years ago, we went to an event, maybe it was a 10X with Grant Cardone in Vegas, and Ed Milet was speaking, and he said, you have to touch your dreams, right? And so when you're building, right, he's very visionary. I'm trying to see the vision. All I see is here, you know? And so I'm trying to forecast. And so again, he's like, we got to touch our dreams. So a lot of it is that when we plan a vacation, it's like, no, we're going to touch our dreams, because this will allow us to know, like, okay, this is what we're shooting for, right? We're going to set our goals and we're going to keep, moving forward, but you got to touch it so that it becomes real, and you're like, okay, it's like a tangible thing. You're like, I can do this. So we've kind of done that throughout the years, is touch those dreams, whether it's traveling, going to Paris, going to New York, going golfing, doing these things. It's touching those dreams, getting us closer and closer.
And then with the kids, it's allowing the kids to feel like having them see their parents touch their dreams,
Right.
and bringing them along. So like when we first took our kids to Hawaii or Kauai, being able to go kayaking with all the kids in Kauai, zip lining with all the kids, hiking and all those fun things. I mean, it's so cool to see it, because our kids still talk about that, and when you see the joy that your kids are experiencing in those times, and you come back to the office and you have a really bad day, or all your appointments cancel on you, you go back to those, those moments are dreams in reality, right? Like they're those types of vacations makes those other days okay.
Yeah.
And even it wasn't always big trips like that. There was a lot of times we were living in Central California, and we would just get a hotel at Newport Beach for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And it was just to be able to walk around these homes and walk along the beach and seeing these beautiful homes and seeing the beach lifestyle and imagining one day, and we did that a lot, actually, because it wasn't that expensive, and it allowed my kids to, I remember when, because, living in where we lived at, there was limited on restaurants, and we would go to Orange County and Newport Beach. Like a big deal for our family was going to Cheesecake Factory.
Yeah.
Like,
There was no Cheesecake
and the kids were pumped, to go to Cheesecake Factory. And
I mean,
Yeah.
6 people, that's like 180,
Yeah.
$200, man.
But the cheesecake in Newport, though, you're overlooking the ocean.
Right.
It's not a normal Cheesecake Factory. It's
Yeah.
a beautiful setting, and as time went on and we would make more money, then we would go to, instead of going to Cheesecake Factory, now we're going to Javier's or Mastro's, or where it's a little more of an elegant type of setting, and and it allows us to feel like we're making progress towards our goals and our dreams when we are seeing those things through our kids.
Yeah.
And now the kids are like, oh yeah, we've gone to Javier's, man. It's amazing. We've gone there. We've gone to Mastro. We've Newport Beach. Yeah, we love Newport Beach. And, it's just, like she said, a lot of it is just doing certain things that even if you don't have a lot of money, doing certain things that make you feel like
There's progress.
it's possible.
Yeah, and it's possible. Yeah, because growing up, even though came from an average middle class, like we didn't do those things. Yes, we traveled, but it was different. It was kind of like on my dad's expense. And we all kind of jumped on the bandwagon because of points and stuff. But it wasn't like it was very different. So it didn't feel. Yeah, it just felt different growing up versus the way we're approaching it with our kids, because now they feel like it's possible.
Yeah.
Right? Because before, even when we have these discussions with family members that work a job, kind of hate their job, miserable, like just status quo, they tend to like, oh, we don't do those things. That's for rich people. That's this. And I was like, no, anybody, you're in America. Like this is impossible. You know, it's not just for certain people. You're able to have
Well,
these
it
same
kind of goes
things.
back into why, if I'm going to build a business, I want to do it with people that I enjoy being around.
Right.
It's the same thing with family. Like, what's the point of having a successful business if I can't share experiences with people, right? When I build this business and we hit these goals that we talk about, I don't want it just to be her. I mean, yeah, it's going to be her and I, but I want to have a party with a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because it's funner.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Right? When you have a family and when you got your 4 kids, like, my joy comes from looking at their faces in those moments. Like, this in December, we're gonna take our kids and my daughter's fiance and my son's future fiance with us. So there's gonna be a total of 8 of us, and we're gonna go to New York and we're gonna have Christmas in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And I already told all of them, I'm like, we've already done that a few times. I go, but the reason why I'm so looking forward to this trip is to be able to see your faces when you're looking at the lights, when you're taking a carriage ride through Central Park, when we're ice skating in Central Park, when we're on Broadway watching a show. Like, that's cool, but I'm going to be looking at your faces, and that's what's going to make it worth it for me.
Yeah.
More
And
fun.
it's the impact, right? The impact you leave, because when he says, like, we want to do it with other people, right? It's because they're making an impact for their families, right? And it's changing their generation and the legacy. Because, like he always says, I want to be that grandfather that's on the mantle, that was the one that dreamt it, visionary, made the change, right? For your generation to go a different way. Or you can continue going this way like everybody else. And there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you want. But if you want to go a different way, you're impacting multiple families and changing their lives and their future and their children's and stuff. So I think that's why we love what we do. It's the impact that we can do for other people.
Yeah, and the cool part is that we're at a point now where we don't hang out or partner up with anybody we don't want to. When you're first building a business, like, you'll take a warm body.
Yeah.
You're like, bro, you got a pulse? Let's roll.
Put a
Right?
mirror
You're
under
like,
their nose, it
like
fogs
I
up,
don't know if
let's
this
go.
guy's a felon or not, but hey, you got a pulse, let's roll. Right? Now we're to a point where we can be picky and choosy in who we want to spend our time with, who we want to go golfing with, who we want to build a business with, who we want to set a future with. And it's cool, man, to be in this position. And we don't live lifestyles of the rich and famous, and but we, like my son. I think we were in the car last week, and I don't know how this came up, but I was like, man, I'm living the dream. And Adele's like, you're living the dream? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I got a wife that loves me. I go, my kids love me. I love their fiancés. Like, we get to do whatever we want. I live a great life, man. I get to go golfing whenever. I got friends that love me. Like, I'm living the dream. I got challenges every day, but at least it's not the same thing every day. And she was like, oh, like, okay. Like, it caught her by surprise when I said that, because I was like, yeah, I'm living the dream, baby. Like, are you? I am.
I was like, oh, yeah, me too.
No,
It doesn't mean things are perfect. It doesn't mean that we have got all the goals are checked off. It just means, like I'm living the dream, bro. Like, I get to
and then
get
you think
after it
about,
every
like,
day.
these are the days we pray for it, right? I mean, those are, like, when we went through the beginning of, like, losing stuff, selling the ring, like, all these different things, right? Like, these are the days you prayed for. All these things that you're like, oh, just Lord, get me through this. I just want to be able to pay my bills, have a roof over my head. Like, all these just, like, simple things. But then you look back and you realize, like, this is what you prayed for.
Yeah.
And they're here. And, and being blessed in the moment and being thankful that God has brought you through it and stuff. And so that's why, just who we partner with. I mean, we really want to be servant leaders out there. And that's why, like, we'll help everybody, and why I do it anyway, because at the end of it, who else is going to help them?
Right.
And so that was the biggest thing when, like, I saw it with my dad. I thought my dad had it. Like, they were good. My dad made like over $250,000 in the 80s. Like, he was doing well for himself, but they didn't have it together. From the outside looking in, I thought they did. Their friends all thought they were good, but when everything came about, I realized that he didn't have the assets of $1 million that Edward Jones or a lot of these financial companies don't talk to people. Well, then who's going to help them? Right? Who's going to show them the different options? Like, did you know this is available, right? So I think that's where, we want to keep growing and being servant leaders out there and helping other people.
Yeah, and part of being a leader too is being able to come from experience, right? So I'm always joking, when people come to me and complain to me that, business is tough, and it's like, well, there are points in your life where you got to dig deep, and I remember, just these stories is what keeps me going. And I remember Adela used to give me a budget of like, $5 or $3 for lunch, and so Del Taco was my go-to because I could get a red burrito for 99 cents. I could get 2 of them and a thing of water, right? And it had AC inside, so I could go sit inside, and it was hot outside. So that was like my deal. I drove around with expired tags for 2 years. Like, I used to have to constantly look in my rearview mirror because if a cop pulled up behind me, I'd have to make the next right and park, just in case. I used to make the Starbucks inside Barnes and Noble. That was my office because I couldn't afford an office, and I couldn't afford to buy a business book, but the business section was right there. And the way I read a bunch of books is I would go grab a book, and I would read between appointments, and I would dog-ear the page, put it back, and then I'd go back the next day and pick up where I left off. Yeah. And I read a bunch of books that way without actually having to buy them. I would have bought them, but I didn't have them. I didn't want to spend. You go to Barnes and Noble, they're like $20 a book.
I call it the Barnes and Noble Library.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do the same thing.
But when you're trying to lead people and trying to lead a company, like, would you follow a guy that hasn't been through it? And I always ask myself that, and the reason why I still try to push the limits today is because I have to ask myself, would I follow me? Would I follow the Ariel that I am today? A lot of days I would say no, like, hell no. Like, this guy has no idea what he's doing. Today, more often than not, I'll be like, yeah, I think I've got enough experience now where I would probably follow me.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. To kind of hit on something you just said, Adela, and then we'll wrap up, but you were talking about your dad and how a lot of the big companies out there, and we won't name all their names, but we know who they are. They wouldn't touch someone that, they worked hard, they stocked some money away, they've done well, but nobody wants to help them get over the line, right? Yeah. And that's really who we serve. Yeah. And granted, I've helped some folks that have 8 figures and, do super well, but I mean, it's people like us that are raising a family, in their 30s and 40s, and where do I put my money, and how do I make sure that we're maximizing, and just need good, sound advice that aren't bringing us millions of dollars. In the future, they may have that, but we're going to help bridge that gap, and I feel like we're a great company to help those that are just needing that bridge, and then those that have already crossed the bridge too.
Right.
So. Now I appreciate you guys. This was amazing, and I hope you guys really got the essence of the story. Anything is possible when, number one, you have a dream and an idea of what you want to accomplish. You stick to it. You change your strategies. You work hard, and you just keep pushing forward. I mean, they are a testimony to people that I see every day. Adela is learning every day. I mean, she's extremely smart. I don't know how she could learn anymore, but she's always like, oh, I just found this out, because we do estate planning, which is a whole other thing we won't get into, but you got to have one of those. And she'll tell me something that she just learned in estate planning. I'm like, oh, well, I didn't know that. And then I'll start looking it up. And having people that are pushing forward, that are not satisfied with that's why I dedicated my life to a completely different career, and specifically with you folks. So awesome. I appreciate you guys. This was awesome. Yeah. Guys, thanks for checking this out. And share it out. This story will help a lot of people. This couple will help a lot of people. So I appreciate you. We will see you next time.
Bye.
See you guys.
Sweet.
Okay. We need to take a picture in the front right here. That way we can kind of be like, hey, keep on the lookout, coming soon.